All right, folks, this is the site guide for Blossom. Blossom is not an SDHGPA Primary Recommended Flying site. The launch site has been posted no trespassing by the landowner. The landowner has not given explicit permission to fly this site. SDHGPA does not condone flying at the site. But with that said, if the site does open up in the future, this will serve as a site guide to fly responsibly and safely. Disclaimers: paragliding is dangerous, hazardous to your health. If you don't do it right, you can get injured or killed. Everything you do is on you. Okay, I think that's out of the way. Anything else I missed?
No, I think we're good. Let's zoom in.
Yeah, don't be a knucklehead and fly safely. So here's El Capitan Reservoir. Here is Blossom. As we zoom in here, you can start to see the first parts. So let's start with the beginning. Is the optimal. This is Blossom here. We'll park down here. So optimal weather conditions.
Yeah, you definitely want to fly Blossom in either a west or a northwest wind condition. You can fly in a south. You can fly in a north. It's actually the only site in San Diego that works in a north. However, its optimal conditions are northwest and west. Southwest, it's going to be pretty cross, and north, you're going to end up flying more on the Amen Ridge side of the site.
Yep. So luckily, most days of the year, if anything's flyable, Blossom is flyable, but we've got this oriented north. You can see how a south wouldn't work. Definitely east is not going to work, that we want this to be within those optimal flying conditions, and then no more than 15 miles an hour for it to be safe. And we're aiming for like 8 to 10, something like that.
Yeah, 8 to 12.
Yeah, usual paragliding stuff. Okay, so you're going to come up on this road, and you will park right down here at the bottom. Sometimes if you're talking to pilots who've flown there for a while, they'll say, I'll meet you at the cul-de-sac. That's because you can see where this road is now new. I'm guessing somewhere around here was a cul-de-sac.
It was. In about 2003, they put the road through.
Yep. So most of us will park right along here, park on this side of the road, not this side, and then use any of these trails to cruise up. This first point here is the bailout. So that is one of the places that you might land. Try not to launch from there. You may see experts or locals doing that, but your best bet and the safest bet is to go all the way up to the launch, which is up here. So this is where we're going to launch from. And then you've got a couple options to kind of fly and look for various pieces. I'm going to rotate it so you can see it as if you're in the air and looking out. Usually there's a house thermal kind of right here off to the left. There's a bump off of these rocks to the right. And then this right here is Amen Ridge.
With Thumper coming up off the left side.
Yep, so Thumper comes off of, you'll see this little cone. It'll be a little bit more apparent once you get in the sky, but I'll zoom in so you can see it. So this cone not only captures thermals coming up from the valley, but there's also this kind of lee side thermal potential, and all of that will get pushed up Amen Ridge, this ridge right here, and will release or make it pretty turbulent in this whole area. So if you're flying low over here for any reason, just be aware. That's a dangerous place to fly.
Generally, when you fly through Thumper, you're going to want to weight shift out away from the canyon and a little more brake on the inside.
Cool. So those are the two house thermals, and then Thumper, which is the rowdier house thermal. Sometimes there's something also coming off of bailout, but once you launch, if you start getting low and you want to land, first place is going to be landing at the bailout. If you can't top land, the second place that's okay to land for us is down here at the hairpin. And really anywhere along this road from the hairpin up to this line of rocks is totally fine to land. No one's going to give you any hard time for that. You're just going to have about anywhere from a 10 to 30-minute hike back up to the bailout.
Yeah, if you miss the hairpin, unfortunately, the racetrack landing zone is no longer permitted. It's the dirt, the flat part before the road. On the other side of the road, you can land in the fields as long as they're not being actively plowed. It does look like there's some construction for the salt mine. Don't know how far out in the future that's going to go.
The big dirt mine. I'm going to load up the SDHGPA site guide maps for this so that you can see a little bit more of where we might fly. So there's a park and bailout. All this green area stuff is pretty good. There's the LZ that is now closed. You can see all the stuff that's red not to land in. Look, if you've got an emergency, you know the deal, but really you want to fly Blossom when you know that you can top land or at the very least hit the bailout. Please don't fly it just because you really want to fly or you're in town for a day or it's your very first flight if you have any risk of landing in any of these red areas. This is just part of flying a site responsibly. So I think those are the hazards and kind of what happens at this site, what you'll see on many days is that folks will launch from the bailout and they will cruise over to the cap, which is this big bowl right here. We've labeled some of the features. Josh, you want to talk about any of the routes over here?
Yeah, first thing I'd like to say is that there is some disagreement about the altitude you need to have to leave launch. Generally speaking, I think if you're at the north end of the screen zone here and you are 600 to 700 feet over launch, you're good to glide over. Generally, you're going to want to glide straight over to LCAP. And then, you know, we've got to pick where you're going to attach to the mountain. And we've drawn 3 spines, spine 1, spine 2, and spine 3. But really, you're going to want to arrive at spine 2, and you're going to want to arrive on the upwind side. Now, sometimes you're going to clear the power lines by maybe 100 feet. That's okay. If you're less than 100 feet, boy, you might want to turn around and go land in the valley and just call it a day. You don't want to hit the power lines. That'll ruin your day, maybe your life. Don't know. Yep. So once you hit the spine, you're going to work your way up the upwind side of that spine until you have several hundred feet at least. Then you can choose whether you want to go over to spine 1 or spine 3. I often will take spine 3. You can see the very heavily shaded portion of LCAP. That's because those rocks are very steep and there's a strong mechanical push there. But once you get up about where the mouse icon is now, you're going to need to shift back to spine 2 or preferably spine 1. Honestly, once you get up about 800 feet, 900 feet, spine 1 works the best. It is the cleanest of the 3 spines. Once you get up to the top, you are effectively 900 feet over launch, and under most conditions, you can head back to Blossom if you like. If you head back to Blossom, my recommendation is go a little bit of bar, and once you get out to the valley where the paved road is, just make sure that you keep the paved road kind of on your left-hand side. Don't cut it too close because then you get in the rotor from Amen Ridge.
Yep.
If, however, you stay at LCAP and you work your way around both to the middle slabs and then finally to the rock pile, you can get up another, let's call it 600-700 feet over the rock face. That gives you some more interesting options. One is to go the rock pile return route that we've also marked, and that's just to glide out straight towards Amen Ridge. Keep in mind, the rock pile is 1 mile farther away than the rock face is from Blossom. Another option is to head west following the granite striations until you get to what we call Rudy's Hill. And you can work your way around. You have to be careful. You can't go straight for Rudy's Hill. You'll definitely want to follow the more granitic rock or the hiking trail until you can basically make not quite a 90-degree turn, but actually the edge of the airspace is a great marker for finding your way to Rudy's Hill. Because you need to be on the upwind side of that. If you are on the downwind side of Rudy's Hill, you will get rotored badly. From Rudy's Hill, it's very difficult not to be able to glide back to Amen Ridge, thus completing like a little mini XC.
Yep. Dig it. And that's where you're going to head back to from Rudy's Hill. So some stuff to look at here is we've got some airspace over Blossom. You can see these big blocks here, and you can load this on Google Earth. This is a KMZ file. These airspaces will show up. So if you're over at the rock pile, you're starting to get close to this airspace, which is Class B. If you click it in the Google KMZ file, you'll see that this is 3,800 to 10,000. So if you're going over 3,800 and you're west of the rock pile, you're pretty dangerously close to it. So keep that in mind. There are some days when we can go from rock pile and cruise over the reservoir. As long as you're under 3,800, you're good. But once you break that, you're probably not going to pop out the top, and you're putting our site a little bit at risk. And then you can see if you go even further, there's this next piece of Class B airspace that drops down to 3,200. So be aware of that. It's a pretty difficult push to the west from here, although folks will do it and have done it. But just keep in mind that airspace. For any of the sites in San Diego, you can see all of these airspaces if you just load this KMZ file, and it can make it much, much easier to see kind of where you need to avoid and where is okay to look for.
And that's quite a thorough site intro for Blossom.
Right on. Thanks for watching.